it's Angie from Canterbury Trails Farm. Today we're going to be making or recreating my version of this vintage bib set that I saw online. I often will just Google vintage bib, baby bib, or vintage baby bonnet or whatever, and I'm not looking for patterns, but I'm looking for handcrafted vintage antique items that are probably one of a kind. And usually these are things that the patterns really don't exist out there anymore. I found this set of bibs. I just printed it off. And these little bibs that each child is wearing raise up, and there's a picture underneath. So like this one says, like, I like milk, and you raise it up and there's like a glass of milk. Or maybe on my version, I'll show you my version. I'm fixing to make them darker so I can make transfers. I did a little baby with veggies, carrots and peas, and his bib would say, Yippee Veggies. And the third one is a little boy with an ice cream cone. His bib will lift up and says, oh goody, ice cream. And then I took the little girl version, but I like made her a little chubbier, sort of like a 20s, 30s Dolly Dimple kind of chubby, and I gave her ponytail. And her bib would say, I like milk, and you raise it up and it has milk in a carton. First of all, I drew a bib pattern, and then using the bib pattern, I came up with the little pictures. I went and used my bib pattern, and I traced it just on white cotton muslin. So I went and traced 12 bib fronts that I'm going to do the embroidery on, and then I went and traced the 12 bibs that will be where I'll embroider. So this piece all here has 12 bibs and the 12 little bibs that will say, like, I'm like milk or Yippee Veggies or whatever. And so this is the piece I'll be doing all my embroidery on. I went and had several yards of this vintage fabric, and I traced the 12 bib backs on this, so I need to cut those out. Then I went and traced on my muslin scraps 12 bib pieces, and these are because each little bib that flips over will be lined, so I will do the embroidery on the one, and then I'll have to sew them together, turn them inside out, iron them, do the trim around the bib. So it's like a real child wearing a bib of an embroidery child wearing a bib. It's sort of reminding like a Hamlet, the play within the play kind of thing. So these will be the backs of the little bibs. So they won't get any embroidery on these. I'm going to tuck those in with my bib backs for right now. And what I'm going to do right now is I want to trace. I need to make since I just drew these freehand, so I need to make them dark enough, and I need to make a scan of this so you can have it to download. The embroidery on the little bibs and on the larger bibs, and on the little bibs I'm not going to have a lining. I'm just going to have the backing. I'm going to sew them together, then I'm going to blanket stitch around the edges, and then we'll attach them to the larger bib, and we'll also be doing a lining in the larger bib, and I'll also show you how we're going to put some bias tape on there to use as ties on the bibs. For right now, I'm just probably no sound, fast motion, doing the small bibs. Alright, I'm not going to be putting any kind of lining in the bibs that I'm sewing, the little bibs that go on the bibs. I'm just going to be straight stitching around him and then turning him inside out, and then I'll turn the opening under and I will sew that, and then I'm going to do the finished edges with blanket stitching, and then we're just going to zigzag them to the front of each bib. So for right now I'm just going to be doing the we're going to turn them inside out, or right side out actually. An iron, then we're going to come back and we're going to top stitch them. Okay, I'm going to put the bibs together real quick here, and I'm going to go ahead and sew these together, and then when we turn them inside out I'm going to top stitch around that, and then I'm going to zigzag this onto the little kid, and that way it'll give, since everything's going to be anchored around the edges, it'll give an anchor right in the middle to keep the batting and everything straight. It's bread baking day, and I have been baking bread all day. I have finished the embroidery and the blanket stitching on the bibs. I realized I had forgotten to do the top stitching on the little bibs, so I'm going to do that real quick, and then we're going to sew the little bibs to the big bibs. Now this step isn't absolutely necessary if you don't want it. I just think it looks cuter and adds a little bit of definition to the little bib since we didn't use a liner. Up to you, it's an additional step if you don't want to do it. I thought I'd do that real quick. So all I'm doing is sort of doing a straight stitch on around it, following sort of the right underneath the blanket stitching that I did. The ties, and I've cut out of double fold bias tape, just white tape. I've cut 13-inch piece, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold one piece under by about 1/2 inch. I'm just going to put it on the back here, and I'm going to sew it in a square. And then leaving my needle in, I'm going to pivot, and now I'm going to sew an X. Now I'm going to do that for the other side too. For the other piece of bias tape, and that's just so we join our bias tape and it is like one piece, because remember it's got that double fold. Okay, and at the bottoms there, I'm just going to tie that into a knot. Ribbons are pretty, but they often come unraveled and you get like a whole mess of silk or grosgrain. Grosgrain hold it up better than the silk ribbons or satin ribbons. But in my bib making experience, the best thing to use is, if you're not using same fabric as the bibs, like you've made like a tape out of the same fabric, then just using bias tape works the best, I think. So let me finish these other two bibs up and then we'll take a picture of them all. I should add, this was poor planning on my part, and I don't know why I didn't do it exactly. But when you're constructing the bibs, you can leave an opening at the top and insert the bias tape into the bib and then sew it, which is probably what I'll do with the next set of bibs I'm doing. I don't know why I just totally wasn't thinking. I think I was so excited about, I had this new skein of hand-dyed embroidery floss. I was just so excited. They're so colorful and I had so much fun that I think I just didn't think about it. I was just thinking I'll just sew bias tape on it, but I didn't think about it. If you open it up, and you can do it while you're constructing the bib, and then you wouldn't have this on the back. I don't think it's any big deal, but it would be inside, so that is another way to do it. And here's a example of, I did the zigzag on the tie. It does seem faster, and it also protects those edges. Okay, and the bibs are finished, and that is what they look like when they're all done. And you can see a little I like milk, and there's a glass of milk and a carton of milk, yippee veggies, and there's some peas and carrots, and oh goody ice cream, and there's chocolate ice cream that's dripping in there. So this is my version of the vintage bib that I found online, and I will of course provide the patterns so you can also transfer them to your fabric. And I hope you have as much fun with this. I really had a lot of fun with this bib project. So this has been Angie from Canterbury Trails Farm with a recreation of a vintage baby bib set. Thank you for joining us.